bonus points. So let's go over here. Modules. Let's look at the first quiz, the history quiz, 10 points. And then let's look at the statistics. So the history quiz, we see like most of the people got 80 above 80%, and just a few below 40% or like at 40%. So let's look at the first question. So in contemporary urban design, what was the reason behind suburban development and the degradation of public space? So based on our reference book and several other authors, not really what they call this, not that we really discuss them, but most people, most planners, and like as we call them, environmental planners in the Philippines, would agree that the popularity of the private car or like private vehicles has really caused suburban development to flourish, especially in the Philippines. So if we go back to our module over here, we'll go to the history of urban planning and design in Cebu City. Notice the big difference between the 1970s and 2000s. So after a big economic boom post Marcos, and also I think a sort of a revival during the Ramos era, so this 1990s, Philippines and Cebu City experienced a lot of growth. And development wasn't really regulated or managed, and it was left basically to the free market. So whoever had the money could develop whatever they want. And who had the money? People with private cars. So basically planning was designed around the private vehicle. So if you had money, you would own like a private vehicle because that was the most convenient way. People weren't really thinking about the masses, the general public. So this is how we ended up from sort of like a very regulated grid planning in the 1970s to this like I guess there's really no other word, messy, almost ad hoc, free for all planning in the 2000s, which is like creates an interesting contrast when planning should have been like incremental, should be incremental and sort of by the people. Now it's really just by the developers, by those who have the money, the power. So those who are in lower income families, the marginalized, your needs are more or less pushed to the wayside. So that's really the point of this quiz here and the next quiz as well. So in general, how did new Cebuano settlements from the 1900s to form in the 1900s and the 1930s? The key factor here was the new development facilities, various essential. Sorry, the key factor here is that the new development facilitates. This supposedly facilitates various essential human activities like shopping for food, shelter, and jobs. I should have wrote food, shelter, and jobs, but most people answered correctly. It was because they were built around train stations. So notice our like cities outside of Cebu, Mandaue, Talisay, going up to. Let me just bring up a map of Cebu because I'm still not super familiar with Cebu City, Cebu province, especially up to Danao over here. So Danao to Argao. Where's Argao? Argao over here. So imagine that length. Danao to Argao over here. Let me measure that distance, something like that. About 81 kilometers, more give or take, maybe like 100 kilometers of railway was existing and destroyed in World War II, or like rendered inactive during World War II or after World War II. So that was like that's the answer there. Let's see, the earliest form of the Cebu City was based on, I should have said of Cebu City was based on what type of planning. So I hate my writing. Type of planning. I don't know why it auto-corrected to time. So it's grid planning. So most of you didn't get tripped up there, even though my typo is like very strange. Okay. So here, what was the goal of urban planning and consequently urban design in the mid-1900s? A key factor was to mitigate the effects of a large number of people migrating into cities. Additionally, this overcrowding wasn't seen in Cebu until the late 1900s. So everyone went for sustainable, and I really think I should not have put the word sustainable there because it's like such a go-to answer. The real answer here is really to make cities cleaner. So that's the main answer here. Only one respondent got that. So this might be a bonus point for everyone else. Sustainable was just too easy of a choice, like too easy of a trap to for you guys. So definitely, sustainability is the goal now. But in the mid 1900s, let's say like 1950s, 1940s, especially in Europe, it was really all about making cities cleaner because they become so overpopulated. Their sewer systems were overloaded and they didn't have anywhere to throw their trash. This is what we're experiencing in Cebu City today, where our trash, what do you call this? Our trash disposal facilities, material recovery facilities, our sewage systems are pretty much nearing the critical point where we can't sort of manage our waste properly. And we see this in our streets. We notice this every time the drinking water or the even just the shower water goes out in our areas. I have friends in Guadalupe who, despite living in a well-off suburban area, their water gets cut out like every other month. So that's really a big problem for Cebu City: water supply and just like cleanliness and hygiene. And that all contributes to sustainability. So I think everyone will get plus 2 points for this because I think sustainable might be too much of a trap term, trap word. Okay. So, what development occurred in the 1900s which significantly improved mobility to the north and south of Cebu City? This new development was no longer used after World War II. So, 8 respondents answered train station, which is correct, but 11 said automobile. So, they didn't finish the whole question, which highlighted that this mode of transportation was no longer used after World War II. So, we don't have a train station in Cebu City. I should have said Cebu City. Yeah, it's here. In Manila, they have a train station. Cebu, we don't have a train station. So that's a clear distinction there. So no bonus points for this. So just additional 2 points for everyone. Let me write that down here. I have like my notepad. Okay, so I'll just note everyone gets additional 2 points for this part of the quiz. So quiz history. AR3233. Everyone gets plus 2. So I'll just note that. Next. Any questions on this? If you have any questions, please raise your hand or like use the chat box. Okay. Oops, I accidentally closed that. Oh well. Let's look at the next module. Next. It'll be faster if I just go to modules directly, go to basic concepts, and then open basic concepts here. So the key thing we discussed over a week ago, that urban design is really for the public, or as we call the community or the people. So let's look at the statistics over here. So which design element is referred to as the relationship of a project's parts to its whole? So 10 respondents said proportion, while 9 respondents said unity. So for our class specifically, we have this in the module. I don't know why that became the first question. I put it on random. Unity is the coming together of different buildings to create a pleasing effect, whether it's coherence, safety, or any other objective. So specifically for our class, that is what unity means. So proportion is the relationship of a project's parts to its whole. So we're talking about building heights, scale, etc., etc. So a little less scale, but more like building heights, window dimensions, street level heights, road heights, etc. Street widths to building heights specifically. Okay, why is it better to involve the local community in the design of public space? Because they are the primary users of that space. So this is, yeah, only one answer there. So this one is multiple answers. How does helping our local communities improve our cities? So this one is number one for me anyway. In this class specifically, the local community provides the most basic goods, goods and services. So with food, shelter. Who creates our homes? It's not technically the architect designs the homes, but who really builds it with their hands? It's the masons, the laborers, and where do they come from? They come from the local community. Atong mga mason, ang mga carpenters, etc., etc. Workers from low-income sectors, from the low-income sector, are the backbone of basic construction. So that's exactly what I said earlier. And then over here, improve local communities means less money for the upper middle class. Hopefully, that is clearly wrong. So the idea here is that if you give sort of better living conditions, give them like proper training, proper education, they will be able to do their jobs more, which would create more construction, which would lead to more money for private developers, which would in turn increase the need for more middle and upper income jobs like managers. What do you call this? White collar jobs, managers, supervisors. So this really like you need like high school or like above like college or above level training to become a manager, to become like a office leader, something like that. But to get those jobs sort of created, you need like the backbone, the workers, the carpenters. So I'm sounding like a presidential candidate, but this is really how it works in the developed countries. Singapore, Australia, America, Europe, the janitors, the carpenters, the cleaners, they're all paid a significantly higher wage compared to that in developing countries because they really think that everyone in the community is important. From the doctor all the way down to the janitor, everyone has like uh, is treated with dignity and has like equivalent wage. No one is like getting underpaid, although like there are like some, like technically there are some, but like in general there's more increased income in developed countries. It's not because they got the money out of nowhere. They created that value because they have a strong labor force, a strong like what they call this employment sector, etc., etc. And this one is workers for the high income bracket provide more important goods and services. So technically a doctor does give good services, but to think about it as more important is really sort of like a trap where because you're a doctor, we need to like pay you more, train you more, etc., etc. It's really because what they call this, all jobs are important in the city. If we have a city that's just full of doctors and no carpenters, who builds the houses? Who builds the roads? If it's all like just the high income people, like the managers, the college graduates, uh, even the engineers themselves, they're not the ones who pour the concrete onto the pavement to create the road. They're just there to like manage the people who do it with their hands. That's the working class. That's who we're trying to design for. That's the public. Anyway, off my soap opera box or soapbox. Which urban design element refers to the functional and aesthetic arrangement of built form? So that's clearly obvious, order. And then over here, multiple answers. Why do we say that urban design should be for the public or for the people? Everything is the correct answer here. So if you only selected 3, you don't get the full points. If you only selected 2, you only get half points. So urban design is supposed to be for the public because for the past decade, maybe like several decades, 50 years in the Philippines, about urban design has been used to benefit the private organizations, the private developers, the wealthy sort of people in the government. Um, like we should focus on designing for public spaces, public use. We should not be focused on designing for a single client. And the Philippines has largely ignored proper urban design, mostly because of several like population, the popularity of the private car, the gap between the wealthy and the poor, and the focus of the power really going all to the wealthy, and the poor have been marginalized. So if you want to feel like you're doing something for the community, you do urban design. So this is really the sort of the core mission vision of urban design, to serve the public. If you want to be like super rich, you work for a private company, become like a private architect. Not to say that it's bad, but that's really the what they call this challenge in the Philippines. So we have less and less people caring about the community, mostly because the system in the Philippines, I hate to use that term, is pretty much forcing everyone to only care for themselves. Because otherwise, if you can't take care of your own family, then what's the point? If you can't take care of yourself, you can't help anyone else. So clearly, our society I hate using society is, well, I don't want to say broken, but we are in for some challenging times. And before things get better, they will get a lot worse. So that's why we need urban designers, urban planners, and architects who care about the community. So that is it for that part of the lecture. I'll stop recording here. I'll create another video.